CJ Harriman thinks a lot about the bottom line. She's not a financial planner or a banker. She's just figuring out who she wants to date.
I'm not opposed to someone having debt if they have the ability to work towards paying it off and are saving and have kind of a financial management plan. But when there's debt and no financial management plan, that's where there's a deal breaker for me.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Keane. Welcome to The Cost of Living. A lot of people are out there looking for romance, but it better come with a steady paycheck and a solid credit score. You know who else would love to get on better financial footing? The Bay. Time is running out for Canada's oldest retailer. It might be able to hang on to a handful of stores, but even if it does, can it make a comeback? Up first, before the tariff crisis and the cost of living crisis, there was the housing crisis, the OG of Canadian problems. We've been tackling it by building more homes in this country, but is it working? Or should we try something more radical? In the last few years, governments have thrown a lot at the housing problem. There's the National Housing Strategy. There's been real efforts to improve zoning laws and regulations. But Danielle Nerman, it seems that the idea behind all of this is that if we could just build more homes, we can bring the prices down.
It's Economics 101, the law of supply and demand. Flood the market with a product, and that product will get cheaper.
Right. So in theory, this should work. How's it going?
You know, pretty good. In the last few years, housing starts in Canada have hit record highs, and prices are coming down a bit. Nationally, they've dropped about 3% from a year ago, but housing is still really expensive in Vancouver and Toronto. In those cities, the average selling price is more than $1 million.
I think prices would have to drop a lot for someone like me to think of those as affordable.
Yeah, because they've just gone up so much so fast. In the last decade, home prices in Vancouver and Toronto have nearly doubled. And there's lots of reasons for that, but the big one is demand. We've seen a huge spike in immigration to Canada, and most new arrivals, they want to live in the big cities.
Makes sense. I mean, there's lots of industry there. There's lots of opportunity in those cities.
Yeah, I talked to Canadian economist Jeremy Cronick about this. He says Vancouver and Toronto have a kind of magnetic pull, and that is why boosting supply in those cities isn't working on its own.
You know, I think people think of population as static and time as static. You know, people with this vision that if you increase supply, that's going to lower prices or price growth. And the problem with that is it assumes demand is the same, right? But demand can change.
Jeremy says when you build more houses in these really popular cities and prices dip, demand goes up. So say someone is living in Waterloo, but they really want to live in Toronto.
And all of a sudden the prices go down. Well, guess what? That person goes, well, now I'm going to come and try and bid on a house in Toronto. And so demand just picks its way back up, and you end up kind of no better off price-wise, and you just end up with a bigger city.
It's a catch-22.
Yeah, I kind of think of it like filling up a glass of water and right away someone drinks it. You just can never keep the glass full.
Okay, so if boosting supply, if filling up the glass isn't going to be enough to bring prices down, what do you do?
Jeremy Cronick says we need to slow down the rate that people are moving to Vancouver and Toronto, and he has a radical idea for how we could do that. We need more of what he calls superstar cities.
You know, in the U.S., if you get priced out of New York, you drive an hour and a half, you're in Philadelphia. You get priced out of Philadelphia, you drive another hour and a half, you're in D.C., and then Baltimore, and then all down the line. And I was thinking in Canada, you know, I'm in Toronto, so if you get priced out of Toronto, where do you go? I mean, Ottawa's 4 hours away and it's a government town. Montreal's 5 hours away and you got to speak French. And then other than that, you got to fly across the country.
I don't know. I feel like I should take up for Hamilton here.
Hamilton, we love you. You're great. But this is not what Jeremy is talking about when he says superstar city. It can't be a spillover city. A lot of people who live in Hamilton have jobs in Toronto. He says a superstar city needs to stand on its own.
So the idea then is that Toronto would have its own Philadelphia, and that might encourage people to spread out.
Yeah, exactly. Paul Beaudry teaches economics at UBC, and he wrote about this idea in a paper with Jeremy Cronick for the C.D. Howe Institute.
Let's try to have a few more kind of 2 million plus cities that are kind of competitive, such that they're offering a whole set of types of jobs that are attractive, both for businesses to go there and people to go there. So not everyone just wants to go to our current big cities, but spread out. And it's by that spreading out that'll make it that when we're doing things in our current big cities, it's not everyone's kind of coming back in and just filling that up all the time.
All right, it sounds good, but how do you do that?
Well, it can happen on its own. It can happen organically, but Paul thinks Canada should be deliberate. Invest in one or two small cities, pour money into infrastructure so that it's incredibly attractive for companies and people to relocate. And that could take the housing pressure off Vancouver and Toronto.
But where do you even begin with that? Like, how do you choose which city wins and gets all this investment?
Yeah, they say there would have to be some sort of competitive process, kind of like an Olympic bid. A city would have to make its case on why it should be the chosen one.
Like in a reality TV format, maybe? Who wants to be Canada's next superstar?
Superstar city? Great idea.
Great idea. But the point is that it would not be up to a couple of economists.
No, but Jeremy and Paul have thought about some of the criteria. You know, if the point here is to take the pressure off Vancouver and Toronto, whatever city was chosen would have to be sort of nearby those cities, maybe a couple hours drive away. And it would have to have a decent-sized airport, really good highways that, you know, are fast and can get you quickly to and from other urban areas. And Jeremy says Canada's next superstar city should already have a superstar university.
You know, London or Kingston are really good examples of the kinds of cities I think that we're talking about here, right? So they already have world-class universities. And they're creating the labor, right, coming out of their schools in those cities who are already there, who know those cities, right? I mean, you've got the conditions, I think, there for success.
I'm not saying that the fix is in here for London and Kingston, but it does sound like they have their eye on these cities. Would they really want to be superstars?
Well, Jen, you don't know if you don't ask. So I called up London, Ontario. I got a hold of Graham Henderson. He's the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. The city has a population of about 600,000. So I asked Graham if he thinks growing to 2 million is even a little bit possible.
And?
He said no.
Okay.
Too ambitious. But 1 million?
So it's doable, but it's going to require a mammoth investment. But if you want to make it, I'm here for it.
He's here for it. Okay. How much investment are we talking about?
Oh, boy. Boatloads of cash.
Now, actually, I do have a number for you. I guessed it would cost about $40 billion, maybe. Something like that.
Is he clicking his pen right there?
He is. He's calculating, Jen.
Okay. What about Kingston?
Kingston also likes this idea, but Brian Patterson, the mayor, says it would be tricky for his city to get that big. Like, it would have to expand into rural communities.
You know, so we could expand east, west, and north. And so we would have the space to do it. But obviously, I can't even tell you how many millions of dollars would be involved in terms of just the infrastructure involved and the planning work that would be required to do that. But hey, I mean, I love ambitious ideas, and, you know, it would be interesting to see how that could work.
So it sounds like they are ready to receive the money if someone wants to give it to them.
Yes.
Where does all this many billions of dollars, where does this come from?
Oh, it comes from taxpayers and private investment and funding from all three levels of government. Economists Jeremy Cronick and Paul Beaudry say it would have to be planned out and it would take a long time.
You could just see this turning into a huge political hot potato. Who gets the money, the superstar treatment, and why? Like, if I live in Toronto or Vancouver, why should my tax dollars go towards building up Kingston or London?
Right? Why spend money to grow a city you don't even live in? But Paul Beaudry says you need to take a step back and look at the big picture.
You might be already invested in the housing market, but you have children that you're thinking, are they going to be able to afford it? This is to offer them more options that actually make it more affordable.
And Jeremy Cronick says if you don't have kids, but you live in Vancouver or Toronto,
if you make it more attractive to live in one of those smaller cities and build up that city, it is likely that the increase in supply in your big city will actually lead to the kind of slowdown in price growth that you're hoping for to make your big city more affordable.
Canada needs more superstar cities. It's a really interesting idea, Danielle.
yeah, and I think we should throw it out there. We should ask people, what city could be Canada's next superstar? There really are no wrong answers, so give us your pitch.
All right, our number is 1-866-550-COST. That's 1-866-550-2678.
Or send us an email, costofliving@cbc.ca.
This is The Cost of Living. I'm Jennifer Keene, filling in for Paul Habishrud this week. How do I love thee? Let me count your assets. Looking for the one may not be quite as romantic as it used to be. As Ellis Cho finds, more Gen Zs and millennials are choosing financial math over chemistry.
CJ Harriman was looking for love.
Yeah, so I met this guy online and he had a very nice profile. I mean, it was interesting, nice photos.
He was funny and handsome.
The table. So I, of course, was very smitten right off the bat.
Things were going great until she found out that
He didn't have a credit card. I felt like it was a red flag of maybe deeper financial trouble.
she was right. He was deep in debt.
I'm not opposed to someone having debt if they have the ability to work towards paying it off and are saving and have kind of a financial management plan. But when there's debt and no financial management plan, that's where there's a deal breaker for me.
For a lot of people on the dating scene these days, money is top of mind. According to a recent U.S. study by Northwestern Mutual, nearly half of Gen Zs and millennials say financial compatibility is more important than physical attraction. And just over a quarter of them believe honest conversations about money should happen before getting serious.
Part of me, the financial planner and the money geek in me, is going, yahoo, it's about time. Because it's just so awesome that people are talking about their money and looking for someone who is simpatico with their money.
Janet Gray is a certified financial planner with Money Coaches Canada. She says the cost of living is forcing young people to think about the financial prospects of their dating prospects. Because in the end, money affects everything.
You know, do I have children? Do I buy a house? Do I try to buy a house? You know, do I have to work 5 jobs? Can I only work 1? Like, I think there's a lot on them.
Finances can put a lot of stress on a relationship. So Janet says it's important to be upfront about money sooner rather than later. Now, maybe it's unromantic to swap credit scores on your first date, but
Divorces are unromantic also. I see a lot of people later saying, you know, if I'd known that this was going to happen, I might have made a different choice.
Choosing money over chemistry isn't new. Yuthika Garamay says economics and marriage always went hand in hand, until only recently.
What happened in about like the 1960s was we had the sort of love revolution that people started to not just marry for money. They really prioritized wanting someone that they had physical chemistry with.
Garamay is a psychology professor at Simon Fraser University who studies relationships. She says Gen Zs and millennials don't have that luxury of being hopeless romantics.
And so I think what we're seeing with the younger generation is that they're sort of reverting back potentially to some of what we thought about when making decisions about who to look for in a partner.
That may be why a dating app popped up recently, matching singles with great credit scores. As for CJ Harriman, she ended up dumping that guy with all the debt and found someone she really clicks with.
We both like bowling. We both like golfing. We have very kind of similar family goals and family relationships. And so we bring those kind of soft qualities to the relationship, but also some tangible stuff that really makes a difference for setting up our foundation together. Yes, like money.
For The Cost of Living, I'm Ellis Cho.
You're listening to The Cost of Living. I'm Jennifer Keene, in for Paul Havashrud this week. Things look pretty bad for the Bay right now, like bottom of the ninth, 10 runs behind kind of bad. But the game isn't over yet. The department store still has time to come up with a plan for its survival, maybe keep a handful of locations. If that happens, could the Bay rebuild? Lanita Layton is a luxury retail and brand consultant who's worked with stores like Burke's and Holt Renfrew. Hi, Lanita.
Hi, Jennifer. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Right now, it looks like the Bay might be allowed to keep 6 locations, but only in 2 cities, Toronto and Montreal, nowhere else. What do you think about that? Does that seem like the right choice?
Well, first of all, let's hope they can keep the 6 to begin with. We'll find out soon enough. Looking at the 6, I mean, you've got 2 major flagships there with Queen Street, Toronto, and St. Catherine Street in Rue St. Catherine, I should say, in Montreal. So those make absolute sense. Yorkdale, you've got the #1 mall in the country and one of the top in North America. Carrefour Laval, Pointe Claire, and Richmond Hill. Don't know if those would have been my first choices. Obviously, they're looking at their profitabilities in each of these. I'm questioning why nothing in the West, when you've got, the Calgary flagship, for example, again, a beautiful flagship building, and the other monster building, Vancouver, which is, right on Georgia Street in the heart of everything at Pacific Center. But I imagine it's probably more around logistics and, unfortunately, it's the West. It's a great big country, and people look at the shipping out there and logistics around that. Although I think they've had sensational teams out there, and I think they could have handled it.
Is part of the issue, or was part of the issue for the Bay, the fact that it was just too spread out?
I don't know if it was so spread out so much as there were too many stores. And there's always been too many stores in my mind and for many when we look at the size of the population of this country. Just the population involved, the supply chain logistics to get it back and forth to so many of them. And many people, including CEOs, I would imagine, have looked at it and said, gosh, I wish we could do this with less stores because they would have had more strength.
So let's talk about what could happen now. Like, let's say that they get to hang on to a handful of stores and there's a chance to rebuild. One of the issues that seems that people point to is that the Bay was trying to be everything to all people, kind of ride the midline when it came to finding their customer. Would it make sense for the Bay to go either higher end or more discount?
I think it's a great question. And, there's an old saying in this business that there's always somebody cheaper. Point in point. So you're dealing with, the massive strength of a Winners, Marshalls, HomeSense group, TJ Maxx, TJX. You've got them who are doing extremely well. And with luxury, let's face it, we've got the beautiful whole Renfrew stores here who are really knuckling in and focusing on their business in the luxury and their destination for that. So the Bay, I don't discount what they're doing, no pun intended, with the idea of trying to be all things to all people. But I think that's the demise of the traditional department store right there is if you want to do mattresses and furniture and all of these pieces and kids and everything, you've got to be the best at whatever it is you want to do in there. And at this point, we talk about blue sky thinking, is it really you that should be doing that? Or in some of those areas, do you bring in the best of the best who really know that business better than you do? So is it bringing in a mattress company, for example, as a leased business into there rather than trying to do that yourself? Is it about bringing in, a furniture group instead? Just looking at opportunities for them. And with the size of some of these stores, Queen Street is over 800,000 square feet. To put that in perspective, the main Selfridges store on High Street in London is about 500,000 square feet. So it's massive to try and deal with and make something work in there.
So that's one way they could go. They could parcel out pieces of the Bay, lease it out to sort of subcontractors in a way. What else could they do? Because as you say, let's blue sky. Like if they asked you, Lanita Layton, how do we bring the Bay back? How do we actually give it a shot at revival? What would you say?
Oh, there's really, love to sink my teeth into that one, but there's two pieces right now to that. And that's provided, of course, all of this goes through for the 6 stores, or even part of the 6 stores. Who knows what may happen there. So in the short term, they're going to have to continue with certain brands, et cetera. And I would be looking at what are the most profitable brands, of course, and hopefully they've still got good relationships with them. And for the most part, the vendors are very open to that. They want to be part of this as well. And there's a lot riding on it for them, quite frankly. So in the short term, you're going to look at how do you sustain the business, but it's only survival at that point. How they're going to thrive after that means there's got to be a different mentality as to who they are and what they want to be. And it's really looking at it as a non-traditional department store. And what does that look like? And when we look at, for example, so Printemps, there's a perfect example, is Printemps just opened up in New York. Printemps, great department stores, considered traditional department stores in France. And they've opened up a concept store in New York because they recognized it would be suicide to open in downtown New York in Manhattan with a giant square footage piece and furniture and everything else in there. So would it be incredible? I'm just thinking out loud here. If, they had somebody like the Printemps concept store take square footage in the Hudson Space store, why couldn't that happen? So there's different ways that they could look at it, but it's really all about what do you do differently now as you go forward? There's been some good moments for the Bay, and we can't forget that, but we can't now lean on that and expect that that's going to be what turns this around.
Well, so, obviously, if that was still working, they wouldn't be where they are right now. But one of the striking things about this story is that it's happening at a time when we're seeing a surge in nationalism. Canadians want to buy Canadian. and there's no more Canadian company than the Bay. Is there a way for them to capitalize on that somehow?
I love that idea, and I'm very much pro everything going on with Canada right now, and we talk a little bit about the stripes and the licensing piece, and there's a lot of discussion right now about they could parcel out and license out the Bay Stripe program. I sincerely hope that they don't do that, because that is one of the pieces that, first of all, makes this interesting to anybody else to purchase. When they're looking at opportunities to build, and certainly for anything around a Canadian company at this point. So to sell that off, I think would be a huge mistake. And as the Hudson's Bay, 355 years old and doing something around that, I don't know. I kind of go to the UK and some of the history there, the Fortnum and Masons and Harrods and these heritage companies. Is there an opportunity for the Bay to be, they are our oldest here and one of the oldest companies in the world. There's got to be an opportunity for them to really lean into that, to your point. But they need somebody with the financing, with the understanding and empathy for that as well, that wants to really embrace that. I'm not sure if there's going to be somebody for that. I'm hoping so. But I think at 6 stores, it's far more manageable to do that as well.
Well, Lenita, we'll see if this one can turn it around. It's going to be an uphill battle, but maybe. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Lenita Layton is a luxury brand consultant in Toronto. That's all for this week. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Danielle Nerman and Blair Sanderson, with help this week from Ellis Cho and Jeff Kynock. I'm Jennifer Keene. Paul Havishrude's back next week. Thanks for listening.